Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
The Man Who Killed Halloween. Hello, you guys, and welcome True Crime Connections. I am Tiffany, your host, and this week I am going to cover the case of the man who killed Halloween, the Candyman. It's been half a century since a Halloween crime in Deer Park, Texas, left a permanent mark on the Halloween tradition. October 31st, 1974, a family man, church deacon, Ronald Clark O'Brien would become the infamous Candyman, and his weapon of choice was potassium cyanide and pixie sticks. Who remembers those? The two, they're like, but this pixie stick's like on crack. It's 21 inches long. According to the Associated Press, while trick-or-treating in a neighborhood with his 8-year-old son Timothy and his 5-year-old daughter, as well as their neighbor, Jim Bates, and his young son. They went trick-or-treating, just like most families do. Parents kind of follow along. Well, they went to a house. Nobody answered. Kids, they don't want to wait that long, so off to the next house they were. They left Ronald in the dust. When Ronald caught up to them, he was now holding 5 21-inch long pixie sticks. He handed one out to each of the children, and then also gave Jim one for his other child that was not trick-or-treating with them at the time. And he gave another one to another child who he knew from church that he had seen out trick-or-treating. It wasn't until later that night, Timothy was allowed to eat one piece of candy. Of course, he wanted the biggest piece of candy. He wanted the pixie stick. Since the tops of the pixie sticks were stapled closed, he was not able to get in it himself. So he asked his dad if he would open it for him. Ronald went ahead, grabbed scissors, cut it, gave it to him. As soon as Timothy put the pixie stick in his mouth, he realized something didn't taste right. It was bitter. So his dad went and got him a glass of Kool-Aid and was like, here, drink this. This will help make the taste go away. And then tried to put him to bed. Almost immediately, he started throwing up, and then he started having convulsions. Ronald called an ambulance, and in less than an hour, Timothy was dead. Mike Hinton is a former county prosecutor, and he just happened to be working police intake that night. He got a call from Pasadena Police Department, and they said that an 8-year-old had been killed, that he was at the hospital, but he had already passed. So Officer Hinton, wanting to get a head start on this 8-year-old boy's death, called Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Joseph Jakimchik. He told him the situation, and Joseph had asked, what does his breath smell like? It smelled like almonds. Right then and there, he knew that that was cyanide. When they did the autopsy, proved that the medical examiner was correct. There was enough cyanide in this boy's body to kill 2 people. They also analyzed the candy and found that the top 2 inches of the tube contained cyanide. So obviously, they need to speak with Ronald to find out, where did you get these? Whose house did you go to? So they go and they pick up Ronald, and they're like, you need to show us who was handing out this candy. Ronald could not figure it out. He could not remember. He didn't remember what street, what house. He said he never even saw the person who handed it to him, that it was in a dark hallway, and the person just handed him these 5 pixie sticks. So police keep driving him around, and they're just like, something's not right. You guys walk 2 streets. How can you not remember where you got these from? After some time passed, they brought Ronald out again. Because they're like, listen, we need to find out who is poisoning people because we don't know how many other people have gotten these. This time, he does point out a house. This house belongs to Courtney Meldon, and he worked at the William Hobby P. Airport in Houston. So when he wasn't home, they went and found him at work, and they arrested him right there in front of all of his colleagues. Turns out, Courtney had an alibi. He was at work at the time of this incident, and he had about 200 people who could vouch that he was there. It's a lot of people. So that was ironclad. His wife and daughter were home that night handing out candy, but they turned their light out early because they had ran out already. They looked more into Ronald and to look into see if there's any way he could have been involved in this. And that's when they found a bombshell. Ronald had recently taken out life insurance on both of his children. It started off in January with $10,000 on each. 1 month before Halloween, he upped it with another $20,000 per child. 1 month before. Idiot. And then when they found out that the next morning, after his 8-year-old son was dead, he was calling the insurance company at 9 a.m. looking to get the money and realized that he was in debt over $100,000. They got a warrant and searched the O'Brien household. That's where they found scissors with plastic residue. It was similar to what was found on the pixie sticks. He was arrested right then and there. The evidence started to stack up against Ronald. It turned out that O'Brien was going to the community college, taking a class, and he was asking his professor some pretty weird questions, like, what is more lethal, cyanide or another type of poison? Who asks those kinds of questions unless you're actually willing to do some damage? Another witness worked for a chemical company in Houston and said that a man had came in who he could not identify by face. He had gone in to try to buy cyanide, but he left because he was told he could only buy 5 pounds of it. Apparently that was not enough, so he left. He remembered that he was wearing a beige or blue smock like a doctor. And since O'Brien was an optician, that was exactly the uniform that he would wear to work. Now we're talking way before DNA and all this other stuff had came about. But although they could not put the cyanide and the pixie sticks in his hands, they knew that something wasn't right here. Ronald pled not guilty. His defense blamed the tainted candy on some untraceable boogeyman. It was some sick individual who was using candy to poison unsuspected children. But his family, his friends, co-workers, they all testified against him. And that's how he ended up getting the name the Candyman. On June 3rd, 1975, a jury of 10 men and 2 women took less than an hour, 46 minutes. They took 46 minutes to find him guilty for 1 charge of capital murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. An hour after that, it was decided that Ronald would be executed by the electric chair. Of course, Ronald had many appeals. They were all denied. So it wasn't until March 31st, 1984, when all of his appeals ran out. You're going to die. After a final meal of well-done steak and Boston cream pie, O'Brien was injected with the new lethal cocktail of drugs considered more humane than electrocution or cyanide gas. I think they should have gave him the cyanide. Cyanide for cyanide. He was then finally put to death for the crime. Outside at the Texas State Penitentiary, a crowd of about 300 people gathered to hear if the Halloween prisoner, had met his end, shouting trick or treat and throwing candy at anti-death penalty protesters. O'Brien's wife, Daneen, she always maintained that she had no idea that he was planning to do this. She divorced O'Brien as soon as she testified against him. And later remarried, and still lives in the Pasadena area. This case is so tragic on so many levels. There could have literally been 5 deaths that night. One of the children fell asleep with the pixie stick in his hand because he wasn't strong enough to get the staple off. That saved his life. For a man to literally just be in his 30s, to think to kill his children for money because he was in $100,000 debt is just as evil as it gets. And then to call the insurance company the very next day, 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Where's my money? All signs pointed to O'Brien. All references for today's episode is from Beaver County Times, the Associated Press, Vice, and the Austin American Statesman. Let me know what you think about this case. Have you heard about this case before? Because a lot of people still reference it. People are scared to celebrate Halloween. You never know when you might run into the Candyman. All right, you guys, listen. I hope you have a safe Halloween. Go out, have fun, stay safe, look at your candy before you eat it. Don't take weirdness from strangers. And we'll talk next time. Bye.